Good morning, children. My name is Shalini Tyagi, and I'm a teacher in St. Joseph's Academy, Mariamnagar, Ghaziabad. Today, I'll be teaching you history, second chapter. The name of the chapter is Growth of Nationalism. Okay, so growth of nationalism. This chapter can be divided into two parts. The first part being the factors leading to the growth of nationalism, and the second part being the foundation of Indian National Congress. So here the first part, factors leading to nationalism. Before going that, I just want to tell you what is the meaning of nationalism. So let us see what is the meaning of nationalism. Nationalism refers to the feeling of oneness and common consciousness that emerges when the people living in a common territory share the same historical, political and cultural background, having the same cultural values and consider themselves as one nation. So this is the meaning of nationalism. That means what? That means we are talking about here, it was immediately after the first war of independence, and that was in the year 1857. So we are talking about then the people of India, then they after the failure of revolt of 1857 till the formation of the Indian National Congress, that is 1885, there was growth of nationalism. So nationalism means feeling of oneness, feeling of belongingness, and this we are going to see, we are going to read this in the chapter. That is, we are just why did this happen. So that is the factors. What were the factors which promoted the growth of nationalism? Now one by one we'll be seeing the factors that can we have categorized those factors into different headings. So the first one being here is, the first one is the economic exploitation of Indians. Okay, Indians by the Britishers. Okay, so first point is here economic exploitation. The second point given here is the repressive colonial policies. They were responsible for the growth of Indian nationalism. Okay, growth of nationalism. Third point is here the socio-religious reform movements. Okay, in that we are going to read about the two main reformers, that is Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyotiba Phule. That is there in your syllabus. Okay, and then we are going contributions of these two reformers will be studying, and later on we'll come to the second part. Okay, so let us just see if in this video we can complete the first part, and that is the factors leading to the growth of nationalism. Okay, the Indian people, they had one feeling of oneness, and why did they have? Because of the economic exploitation which was done by the British. Now let us see, here we can see one by one. You can do one thing, you can also put into different subheadings, like how the peasants, they were also exploited, the artisans and craftsmen, they were exploited by the British, and and the third one is the working class and the educated Indians. We can take them one by one, or we can take them together also. Now let us see here. So the economic factors which were responsible for the growth of nationalism is, the first one is the India was agricultural country. So agricultural India was made an economic colony to serve the interest of the industrial England. India being the cultural country and England being the industrial country. So here it became, the British made India the economic colony of England. Okay, how was it made? Let us see here. The British, how was it made? Let us see one by one. So here India was made to accept ready-made British good, either duty-free or at nominal rates. Okay, while Indian products were subject to higher import duties in England. So India was made to accept ready-made goods. Okay, the which were produced in the industries of England, and while Indian products, okay, that was done duty free or at the nominal duty rates, while the products of Indian, they were subjected to high import duties in England. Okay, so this is also a way of economic exploitation. Now we come to the next one. Okay, the next point is the British capital. The British capital invested in Indian markets, especially in railways, shipping, oil, tea and coffee plantation was used to get huge profits and were sent to England. The next one being the export of the raw material and food grains deprived the country of her agricultural surplus and raised the prices of the raw material. As the raw material or the food grain which were surplus, they were all exported to England. And the next, another example we can give is the salaries and allowances of the English who served in administration and in the army were paid out from the Indian resources. Okay, the salaries, allowances of the Englishmen who were serving in administration or in the British army, they were paid out of the Indian resources. So these are the different ways by which economic exploitation of India was done by the British. So the drain included, one more thing is here, you can just see the drain included the salaries, incomes and savings of the Englishmen and the British expenditure in India on the purchase of the military goods, office establishment and unnecessary expenditures on the army. So here you can, not only that the salaries and allowance of those people, but incomes and savings of the Englishmen and the British expenditure in India on the purchase of military goods, even the military goods, the office establishment, interest on debts, unnecessary expenditure on the army, etc. and etc. All these things are the different ways which shows the economic exploitation of Indians. So because of this, all these classes, all the three classes which you have seen here, the first one is the peasant, the second is the artisans and the craftsmen, working class and educated Indian, they all were very angry, they were all disheartened and they just want, and then grows a feeling of oneness. Okay, so all these things gave a reason, these were the factors which promoted the growth of nationalism. Okay, all the Indians, they started to become one. Okay, there was a belongingness to the nation, the feeling of belongingness to the nation, the feeling of oneness is called nationalism. Now we will come to the second point, and the second point is the repressive colonial policies. Now what do you mean by this? In this we'll be seeing the British, they have brought some policies where we'll be reading one by one. So there are many examples of of these policies which are given, at least 5 are given in your book. So now the first one is the first one here is given, a Grand Delhi Darbar. Okay, so Lord Lytton organized a Grand Delhi Darbar in 1877 to proclaim Queen Victoria as the Empress of India. Okay, the first one is this. After the failure of 1857, First War of Independence, India had come direct under the British Crown. Until then, it was under the East India Company. So to announce that, he organized, okay, a Grand Delhi Darbar was organized in 1877 to proclaim British Queen Victoria as the Empress of India, and lakhs of rupees were spent on this event. But nothing was done for the Indians who were under the grip of famine. Okay, so this is one repressive colonial policy. The second one being here is the Vernacular Press Act. You can talk about the Vernacular Press Act. Now, what is Vernacular Press Act? So, the Vernacular Press Act forbade. Okay, forbade means said no. So, Vernacular Press Act forbade forbade the vernacular papers to publish any material against the British government. This act was not applicable to the English newspapers. Okay, so you cannot publish any material which is against the British government in the vernacular languages. Okay, so this was yes. Okay, so this is also a repressive policy. Now we come to the second point, and the second, here again one more act is there which is called as the Indian Arms Act 1878. So the Indian Arms Act 1878 made it a criminal offence for the Indians to carry arms without license. That means you cannot carry any arms without license. Now here you can ask, even now it is not allowed to carry. So but here what is this? This act was not applicable to the British. They can carry the arms without the license. That's why it is a repressive policy over here. Now we come to the third one. The third one is the reduction of the age of Indian civil service examination from 21 years to 19 years. So they, why did they make it? To make it difficult for the Indians to compete for it. Okay, then the next one, the fourth one, is the import duty on the British textiles were removed. Okay, the import duties on the British textiles were removed. Okay, and the the last one is here, the Albert Bill. Okay, the Albert was withdrawn. Okay, now let us see what is this Albert Bill. Now according to this bill provides for the trial of the British or the European person by Indians. Okay, I'll again read it. This bill provides for the trial of the British or the European people by Indians. By this act, the British tried to introduce equality between the British and Indian judges in India. That means any Indian judge can try a British officer, but this was resented. This was not liked by the British people, so it was withdrawn. Okay, so this is also a repressive withdrawn. Now no longer this existed. Okay, so this was withdrawn. So these are the different repressive policies of the British. Okay, so because of these repressive policies, they provided a stimulus to the political agitation and quickened the pace of Indian nationalism. They helped in giving a stimulus. Okay, stimulus to political agitation is here protest. The Indian people were protesting. Okay, protesting for what? Protesting against this British government. Okay, so here it provided stimulus to the political agitation and quickened the pace of Indian nationalism and paved way for Indian nationalism, growth of Indian nationalism. Now we come to the third point. The third point is here, children, here socio-religious reform movements. Okay, so here you will see that in social religious reform movements, you will see that there were many reformers, the Indian reformers, who tried to reform the Indian society. In your syllabus, we are going to strictly stick to the syllabus, as I told you earlier also. So we are going to read about two reformers. The first one is Rajaram Mohan Roy, and the second one is Jyotiba Phule. Now what are their contributions? Now Rajaram Mohan Roy, all of you know about him. He was the founder of Brahma Samaj. If you write this, founder of Brahma Samaj, this is one of the contribution. You fetch 1 mark for this. Now you see here, Rajaram Mohan Roy was one of the founders of the Brahma Samaj, the precursor of the Brahma Samaj, a religious what is Brahma Samaj? It is a socio-religious reform movement in the Indian subcontinent. Okay, the second here more for the contribution, you can also write that his influence was apparent in the fields of politics, public administration, education, religion. He was also he was known for his efforts to one more important thing is abolition of the practice of sati and child marriage. Here the second contribution you can write is marriage. Rajaram Mohan Roy is considered to be the father of Indian Renaissance by many historians. So here basically we have come where two contributions we have taken. The first one is foundation of Brahma Samaj, and the second one is abolition of the practices of sati and child marriage. Now we come to, and he is also known as the father of Indian Renaissance. Okay, now we come to the second Indian reformers. Okay, his name is Jyotiba Phule. Okay, he was an Indian. He was an Indian social activist, thinker, anti-caste social reformer. Okay, uh, and writer from Maharashtra. He is from Maharashtra. His work extended in many fields. The first one is you can understand it by eradication of the untouchability. Okay, he was against untouchability. He was against the caste system, the women empowerment. He spoke about women empowerment. He is mostly known for his effort in educating women and the lower caste people. He and his wife, okay, they were pioneers of the women education in India. Okay, Savitri Bai Phule, his wife's name is Savitri Bai Phule. They were pioneers, they were the beginners of the women education in India. And Phule started his first school for girls in 1848 in Pune. Okay, and many other. And yes, one more contribution is he was a founder of Satya Shodhak Samaj. Okay, what is the meaning of Satya Shodhak Samaj? Society of truth seekers. Okay, so here truth seekers to attain equal rights for the people from the lower caste. So you yes, so many contributions, many, so you have to write in points here. I have told you many points. Okay, the first one is here he was an activist. He was anti-caste social reformer. He worked for untouchable eradication of untouchability and the caste system, the women empowerment. He started first school for the girls. Okay, so many things are there. You can write or you can understand any of these. Okay, now we come to the next point, and that is the role of press. Okay, the fourth factor which promotes nationalism, growth of nationalism, is the press. This is also important here. Now we can categorize this into three different points. The first one is, it was through the press that the message of patriotism, modern liberal idea message of patriotism, modern liberal ideas of the liberty, nationalism, home rule, and freedom and independence spread among the people. Okay, the first thing is press gave the message of patriotism, modern liberal ideas of liberty, nationalism, home rule, freedom, and independence among the Indian people. Then the next one is the press carried out the daily criticism. Okay, daily criticism of the unjust policies of the British government. It carried out. Okay, so here the press carried out the daily criticism of the unjust policies of the British government. This exposed the true nature of the British rule in India. It used to criticize in its paper the unjust policies of the British government. Unjust policies, you can just, all repressive policies you can talk about. Okay, and the third one is the press made Indians aware what was happening around the world. Even today, through press only, we come to know what's happening in the world. So the press made Indians aware about what was happening around the world. This made them aware about the political and social development outside India and inspired to shape their own what's development. Okay, so here with this we have finished the first part, and that is the factors for the growth of nationalism in India. Now we come to the next part. Okay, till now there was no organization which was working on behalf of the Indian. Okay, so here from the year 1857 to 1855, so this is the period of 1885. This is the period of growth of nationalism. So why 1885 we are talking? Because 1885 foundation of Indian National Congress was done. So we will be seeing before foundation of Indian National Congress there were some early organizations. Okay, we'll be seeing one by one. There are three major major precursors of Indian National Congress. Okay, as I told you, second part is foundation of Indian National Congress. So before the formation of Indian National Congress, there were some organizations. Like first one is the East India Association, which was founded in 1866. It was founded by Dada Bhai Nehroji. Okay, and it now we are going to see the precursors of Indian National Congress. Okay, so this is the second part of the chapter. Okay, so here the first one is East India Association. Okay, it was founded in 1866 and it was founded by Dada Bhai Nehroji. It provided information on all the Indian subjects to the British citizen and the member of the parliament. Okay, the next association is Indian Association. Okay, it was East India Association and now it is, we are going to read, after 10 years there was one association founded and the name of that was Indian Association 1876, founded in 1876. After 10 years now we will see, and founded, it was founded by Surendranath Banerjee. The previous one, East India Association, was founded by Dadabhai Naoroji, and this one, Indian Association, is founded by Surendranath Banerjee. There is one more association, and that is Indian National Conference. Its name is Indian National Congress in 1883. Okay, and now we come to the main, okay, and the main political party, we can call it. Okay, so that its name is Indian National Congress. It was founded in 1885. It was founded by A.O. Hume, a British. Okay, now let us see. Yes, so now you see the Indian National Congress. It is the oldest political party we have in India. Okay, the president of this is Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. Okay, we are talking about same Indian National Congress. Now let us see here. It was founded by A.O. Hume and Lord Dufferin supported it initially. Why did British? It was founded by British and Lord Dufferin, he supported it initially. What was the reason for the support? You see here. So Lord Dufferin supported it initially as he thought Congress will work as a safety wall for the popular discontent against the British rule. Okay, this is going to work as a safety wall. You know what is the meaning of safety wall? In the pressure cookers you have this safety wall. Okay, so it's going to work like that. They thought that it's going to work, it is going to be positive to the British, but it was not like that. Okay, so they supported it initially. They supported it as they thought that Congress will work as a safety wall for the popular discontent against the British rule. Later on their attitude changed because Indian National Congress was working for the Indian people. It was a major political party, not a political party, a association which was working for the promotion and growth of nationalism in India. Now we'll be seeing what are the aims, objectives we'll be seeing here. Before that, we'll just see this is formed now in 1885. So every year you have sessions, okay, meetings of them. So the first session was under the presidentship of W.C. Banerjee. You have president of this also, okay, like as I told you, now the president right now today, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi is the president of Indian National Congress. In the same way, first session was under the presidentship of W.C. Banerjee and second session was under the presidentship of Dada Bhai Nehroji. Okay, we're going to see. So first session we are talking about, it was, yes, 1885 only. Okay, now let us see. Now we have come to the last topic of the chapter, and that is the aims or the objective why Indian National Congress was formed. Okay, so the aims are here. We'll just take one by one. We have here, yes, 4 aims are given here in your book. The first one is to promote friendly relations between the nationalist political workers from different parts of the country, to form friendly relations. Between whom? Between the nationalists, political workers from different part of the country. Second one, to develop and consolidate the feelings of nationalism irrespective of caste, religion or province. So they just wanted to do away with the caste, religion, province. Those kinds of feelings should not come in the minds of the people. We should have the feeling that we belong to one nation. So to develop that, to develop and consolidate the feelings, the feeling of nationalism irrespective of caste, religion or provinces. Provinces, those were the states. Today we have states. That time they were called as provinces, different parts of different territories of India. And the fourth one is to formulate popular demand and present it before the government. Now they are going to work for the Indians, so they are going to keep their demands. Okay, they will formulate what demands we want to be met by the British government. So they are going to make a agenda of their demands. Okay, or they will formulate the popular demands and present it and keep it before the British government. Train and organize public opinion in the country. So these are the four main objectives of Indian National Congress. First one is to promote friendly relations between nationalist political workers from different part of the country. Second one is to develop and consolidate the feelings of nationalism irrespective of caste, religion or province. And the third one is to formulate popular demand and present it before the government. And the fourth one is to train and organize public opinion in the country. So these are the different objectives or the aims of Indian National Congress. With this, we finish our second chapter. Okay. So here, my advice to you people is that please stick to the syllabus, and all of you just yes. And after the syllabus, after the chapter at a glance is given. Okay, that is very important. So in this chapter at a glance, all important is a kind of summary of the chapter. So you people are going to revise or going to by heart the chapter at a glance. Okay beta, I hope you have understood. It's going to be helpful to you. Thank you.